Howdy, howdy, welcome back. So today we've got two purple handkerchiefs and a yellow one, but the yellow one simply vanishes. Ooh. And then all you have to do is you simply tie this, and then it appears in betwixt. Haha. Gorgeous. Gorgeous. Thank you. Thank you. Hold the applause. Hold the applause. Okay. So we are back with some Maximum Entertainment 2.0. We've actually got the notebook out. We've been writing down set list. We've got patter list. We've got all sorts of fun stuff going on in the notebook because we're starting to write down what our plans are. We were trying to put together something for one of the tricks that we just got the other day. So we've been kind of going through it, and I think they're actually still, they're still in my pocket. So that's fun. But I've got to practice that one a lot more before I'm ready to show that one. Now we're going to jump into chapter 20. During the show. This is it. This is where all the planning and rehearsal hit the road. In this chapter, more than any other, what you will read evolved directly from in the audience note-taking, mostly mental notes, I've done over many years. This is my strongest real-world advice, so please read and proceed with care. Although I comment only on those potholes and slippery slopes that affect large segments of our art. It's prudent for you to assume everything in this chapter began by seeing you or someone similar to you perform. Also, again, 100% of these opinions come from watching professionals or the most highly advanced amateurs. If I write about performance errors made at Magic Club shows, I'd be writing into the third millennium. Your opening moments. It's useful to think of first moments in front of the audience as a job interview. You want to be on your best behavior to impress from the start. Make friends with the audience. Let them know by your smile, your words, and your body language that standing there in front of them pleases you immensely. Smile, laugh, get some good humor going. It's an honor for me to be here with you. You won't necessarily say that with words. You project that feeling with your face and body. And you project that attitude no matter what. A microphone that cuts off improperly set stage lights. Waiters still noisily, that eye makes a big difference. Clearing dishes despite your explicit instructions that they be off the floor once you begin. None of these can be allowed to impinge upon your opening moments. Remember, they don't care. The audience doesn't care about the performer's problems, so to point out anything that's not to your liking, especially in the opening moments, serves no useful purpose and reflects poorly on you. Therefore, as I suggested previously, you walk out with an air of confidence, ready to smile and greet your awaiting audience. Cat crosses the courtyard. Gotta have a swagger. That's a Wheel of Time reference. Yes, we are cultured here on the channel. You project not the TV show, books. Yeah, books. That's another topic for another time. You project a more commanding presence if you don't start talking the second your mouth is in range of the microphone. Wait a second or two before you do or say anything at all. Anchor yourself. Let the audience focus on you. Then get started immediately. That should be no problem because you made certain that all your props were in place before you walked out. The microphone is where you expected it to be, and the mic stand has been adjusted to the proper height. If you're using a clip-on or headset microphone, you're already certain it's been turned on. You! Exclamation point! Gag me with a spoon. If your goal is to be a man of mystery, why start with a weak gag? When I see a performer early in his set ask a spectator, do you know what word I'm thinking of? No. That's correct! Exclamation point. I know it's going to be a weak act. Similarly, for a long joke, unless you are certain the story kills, save it for later. Leisurely openings worked on the Chautauqua circuit, but no longer. In the age of music videos, when nothing seems to stay on the screen for more than 2 seconds, people need stimulation quickly. So get something concrete started within your first 30 seconds. So this, we're talking even stage performers, openings need to be very short and sweet because you need to captivate your audience. It's your hook. It's what you need to get the hook in there, and then you set it later. We talked about this multiple times. We've done videos on it. We've done research with Chris Ramsey with Rise Magic with Chandler Riggs. Chandler. His name's Chandler. I don't remember his last name at the moment. He's actually been talking about getting back into doing Rise Magic. But in here we have somewhere something. Here it is. Prove yourself. You got 30 seconds, maybe 2 minutes, but you really got to get it out there. Just showing off. That's where you've got the hook. Now you got to set it with the showing off. This can be your longer piece. This is where you've already established that they're going to like you. That's your show. That's your prove yourself. You have to prove to them very quickly that you're worth watching. Then you can show off because now you're friends, right? Now you can really start to build on that relationship that you already started on. Then you want to get real interactive by getting the audience involved. This is where you can really start to build those relationships personally as you get their names and you find out things about them. Then you got some mental magic. This is where things start to happen up here and not just down here. Now they got to think about it, which makes them more engaged. And then you finally, with this idea in mind, you have a leave behind. This is something where you can actually put something in the spectator's hands and then they can take it with them and have a souvenir. It's a great way to go. Okay, back to this. Take a moment to get comfortable on stage, then let them know what you are about. You might start with a strong trick or a quick story or joke, but don't dawdle. The audience grants you a very short honeymoon before they mentally decide whether this is a relationship they care to pursue. Strong, by the way, does not necessarily mean a knock-'em-dead routine. It would be anything that you know from experience works to get your attention, their attention, and establish your character. About face! Exclamation point. There's a lot of them in this chapter, apparently. Banquet performers face obstacles not found in other situations. The clinking of glasses and silverware, wait staff delivering and clearing food, and one other particular dangerous hazard. People sitting at round tables. Some in the audience are facing you. Some have their backs to you. When performing at a banquet or any situation where people are sitting at round tables, acknowledge the fact that you cannot see everyone and they cannot easily see you. Do not allow yourself to perform for backs of people's heads! Exclamation point. If you do, they will talk during your show and that hurts you. Control the situation! Exclamation point. I read the exclamation points where here we are in chapter 20 and I read them, one as like a catchphrase, but two because I want to deliver to you what he finds important, and by exclamation point, this is where you should really be paying attention. After a very brief time on stage, no more than a few minutes, say something along the lines of, "Ladies and gentlemen, if you are not already facing this way, please take a moment right now to turn your chairs so you can see me and I can see you. No stiff necks allowed!" Exclamation point. The whole show happens up here. Trust me, I've seen this before. Failing to make this request is a major mistake. You may have asked the MC to take on this duty prior to your introduction. Sometimes that suffices, sometimes not. If not, take matters into your own hands. Do you see what I see? Do you hear what I hear? You've just had a woman in the audience choose a card and you instruct her to show the card to everyone. Did everyone see the card? Are you certain? You need to presume that every person watching wants to see and hear everything, whether it's true or not. When I'm in the audience and I cannot see the selected card, my attention starts to wilt. You've experienced the same feeling. Therefore, when a card is selected and you ask that it be shown to the audience, you must ensure that everyone sees that card. Don't forget, you are controlling every moment, and you lose control of your spectator does not wholly follow your instructions. Simply asking, "Did you all see the card?" might be enough. This applies to any effect in which you have asked them something be displayed by a civilian. Lay folks, for the most part, lack a sense of theater. They talk softly and they won't make their movements expansive, so you must keep your eyes and ears attuned to the situation. Years ago, I saw my pal James Maps, a major league stage hypnotist, neglect this basic tenet. During one of the strongest parts of his program, he has a woman write on an overhead projector as he regresses her to an age 12 and then age 6. It's fascinating to see how her writing changes, or it would have been. She had inadvertently moved the projector, and so while she and Jim talked about what she was writing on the transparency, those of us in the audience of more than 1,000 were clueless. He never looked up to see what we were seeing, which was just a shadow. When I did my Psychic Entertainers Association performance workshop, this type of problem was the flaw that I needed to point out the most often. These glitches can be avoided if you accept and work towards this truth. As a point, this was talked about in the pre-show stuff, where you're not only making sure that you can hear but the audience can hear what you hear, or you hear what the audience hears, and you see what the audience sees. But that's not just pre-show. You also need to be doing that during your show, as he's stating here, so that you can be in real time. It comes down to like a presentation style where you're talking to somebody on stage and then you get engrossed in the moment and the magic, and then you forget the audience is the reason why you're there, and if they can't see what you're doing, you've lost the plot. So just be mindful and make sure you pivot. Make sure that you stay aware. Anything of any importance that happens during your show must be seen and heard by everyone, including you. It doesn't say that, but you should also be witnessing it as well, so that you know that you're delivering what it is that you're trying to deliver and not just falling short. When cards are selected, when locks are examined, when you address anyone on stage with you or in the audience, when an item is to be displayed, be aware, be aware, be aware of what the audience sees and hears. As much as is practical within the routine, play everything to the widest audience possible. The back row is as important as the front row because you never know who's sitting there. Another point, and I've said this before when I did a lot of my research and study with Doug Kahn, and then later when he clued us into Jimmy Talks a Lot. Jimmy Talks a Lot does Substack and he writes articles. I highly recommend you check them out. Because what he talks about is this. I perform on the computer to the camera. See what I just did there? I could basically reach with one hand what you can see. I have a very small space to control. But when you're performing live, you have to extend beyond this box. So you got to really be careful and make sure that you're stretching out the parameters of where the show is happening. Create some movement. We talked about this with some coin work. For instance, you have a coin here, you simply can catch the light to make it vanish over here, but then it's going to reappear over here. Okay? Once again, you see it go over here, and then as soon as it disappears from here, it reappears over here. You want to, and again, I'm still performing to the camera, but you want to do these grand gestures. Not, you don't necessarily have to do this, but you can do this. You reach up out of frame, like above your head. You come down here, like he has a ball. Jimmy Talks a Lot has a ball that he'll bounce, because then he gets the ground involved. He'll toss it to people in the audience, because then there's interaction happening. So it's imperative that you understand that controlling every moment, the magic doesn't happen right here. Reptile arms. This isn't where it happens. Doesn't happen up here, doesn't happen here, doesn't happen here, doesn't happen here. It happens everywhere, all the time, all at once. Reference. Let me know down below if you know where that's from. Anywho, back into what we're go. As much as is practical within the routine, play everything to the widest audience possible. The back row is as important as the front row because you never know who's sitting there. Some performers seem to know this instinctively. In 2002, I attended a lecture given by Joshua J. At one point, he was demonstrating one of his devastating moves with cards and realized some in the back of the room were having difficulty seeing his hands. What did he do? He jumped up on the table! Exclamation point. He controlled the situation in every way I've seen few others do, including pros with many more years of performing experience. And this happened when he was still many months away from attaining the legal right to order a beer! Exclamation point. You control every moment by being aware of everything around you. Look, we haven't done our deep dive into Joshua J just yet, but between this book, Sleights in Mind, and a couple of other things that we've been looking at recently, his name is at the pinnacle. It's at the forefront of so many things that we've been looking at. So don't worry. We did a video on Garrett Thomas in December. We're going to be doing something on Joshua J pretty soon. He's phenomenal, and he's great for beginners. He has so many products out that are great for you if you're a beginner. And if you're not a beginner, he's got resources out there that'll help you become even better. Rise to the occasion. Audience participation is a good thing, but it leads to a conundrum. When you're about to interact with a person in the audience, if that spectator remains seated, you immediately risk losing the attention of those who cannot see him or her, which essentially is everyone not within a few feet of the person. We get this a lot with like talk shows. If somebody's going to get the microphone, they have them stand up so that they become a part of it. They put the spotlight on them specifically so they become a part of the conversation. In general, my advice is for you to ask that person to stand up. Too many performers seem to think that if they can see the face of the person standing, we all can. If you control who is going to participate, choose people as far back into the audience as you feel you can comfortably manage. How often have we seen performers continually choose and interact with people in the front? Spread the joy around the room! Exclamation point. I mean, you got like The Price is Right, where they're pulling people from all over the audience. I mean, I'm not sure if that's randomized or if they've already selected the seats. Like, I don't know how that works. An important tip: whenever you have someone stand for more than a short moment, move around on stage. Walk closer to the person, or for dramatic effect, walk to the opposite side of the stage. In either case, audience members whose view had been blocked now will be able to see you. The longer a person is standing, the more important it becomes that you, the true center of attention, shift position on stage. It keeps them engaged because something different is happening. If you're standing still, as we learned from Drax, you disappear. So keep moving. If you are dealing with people down front, perhaps chosen by some random method, and what they say ought to be heard by all, you might ask them to please turn around and say that to everyone. Now, I know I just made a joke about Drax from Guardians of the Galaxy. When he stays completely still, he disappears, but it's facts. It's real. It's actually how neurochemistry works, because it's about predicting patterns along with a bunch of other processes and systems in your brain, faculties that happen every single day. If your brain can predict pattern, then it ignores it. So, for instance, if I'm just sitting here doing nothing, then you leave. Now, that pause was for dramatic effect, but you leave. But you might have stayed because you know that I wasn't going to do that for the rest of the video. You knew I was going to re-engage with you to make a point. And that's the point, the dramatic shift. Okay, because we've moved from nothing to something. Now, if I sat here the whole time, you'd be like, okay, nothing interesting is going to happen. I'm going to leave. Doesn't matter. But if you continuously change the texture and flavor of your shows or your conversations, then it gives it more depth and it keeps people interested. To sum up, 2 rules of thumb. If the interaction with the person in the audience lasts more than 5 seconds, you should have that person stand. If you deal with someone for longer than a minute, it may be wiser simply to have that person join you on stage. Avoid dead time. You seek to eliminate weak spots from your act, and there's nothing weaker than dead time. You impose dead time on your audience whenever nothing is happening, or something is happening that fails to hold the audience's attention. Caution: attention-inducing dramatic pause is not a nothing moment. Cards being counted, numbers being added, a spectator searching for a $20 bill that you've asked to borrow, all are moments that tend to be less than riveting. You can incorporate these moments into your show provided something else occurs concurrently. A recap of the action may do the job. I want to remind you that these people were all selected randomly. She could have named any number and she said 24. The locks were provided by the Nassau County Police Department and then thoroughly checked by 5 audience members. I'll use an example from Brendan Carlisle, I believe his name is. I've been seeing him pop up a lot lately. Absolutely fantastic stuff. He makes some jokes in his shows about stuff like this because one of the things he does is, I believe it's a puppet show. So he asks the spectator to do something, and then he goes around to his prop box and he's like, well, he's signing a card. I'm going to do a short puppet show for you. And it's signing a card, so it's already done by the time he even finishes saying what he's doing. And he comes back out in front with the puppet. He looks over and he's like, oh, you're done? Thank God. And he throws the puppet. So he makes fun of this moment because signing a card can be boring, and he makes a joke of it by introducing something that might be less than pleasing to the audience. Or you might sidestep dead time with a running commentary of the action, providing that the commentary holds your audience's interest by offering some new information. I couldn't help but notice that your handbag seems to have been packed for, a weekend at the beach? While he counts, you'll notice the graceful manner with which he handles the cards, the result of years of dorm room poker, no doubt. A joke that was made by, I can't even remember his name. Oh no. He has a very flat affect. He's been performing since he was a kid. He's been on Penn and Teller. He wears a suit and he's very clean cut and he's just very nice. And he's just very flat affect. I can't remember his name at the moment. If you know his name, put it down below. So he does this thing in his act where he's like, pretend like you're holding water or something in your hand. Great. And then he gives them a different fluid and he comments on how they changed their hand. And he's like, here's a person who knows the viscosity of fluid. I can appreciate that, or something. Like, he makes a line about how they mentally change their hands because he's making light of a situation. He's getting interaction. He's not making fun of them. He's actually elevating the situation by giving texture. The best performers know that something must be happening even when nothing is happening. Make sure that something is happening all the time. Something of interest is happening. Something must be happening even when nothing is happening. That something can be as simple as looking out into the audience purposefully. Comedians have used this tactic with great success for as far as their voices have been recorded. When Jack Benny stopped talking and slowly raised his hand to his chin, that was his signature nothing that signaled what was going on in his mind, and it got a laugh. When Jerry Seinfeld rhetorically asked, "Who are these people?" there's a laugh, followed by a pause as we watch him consider his own question. When a mentalist peers into the audience to find from where the thought he's receiving emanates, nothing is happening. But there is drama in the moment, provided the audience knows he is in full control. If the audience suspects even for a moment that the pause is happening because uncertainty has crept into the routine, they will start to lose their connection to the entertainer. Your antidote to those poisonous moments is meticulous preparation, along with your steely-jawed promise to yourself, never lose control. So even when something like Makobi, I believe, yeah, he was a FISM champion multiple times. I've added him to my YouTube, so I've been seeing his shorts pop up, and he's practicing a card control where he's just sloppily shuffling and throwing the cards around, and every time he flips a card over, it's the card everywhere in the deck. Even when it was over here, it was over here. He clearly put it over here. Now it's in his hand, and it's kind of gorgeous to watch. Just following that card is just a fun moment, and it's great. And his whole act is just that, the sloppiness. But for anybody who truly is aware of what he's doing, it's a lot. I mean, he's doing a lot in a little package, and he makes it look so good. And he likes to do introverted videos where like it almost seems like he's messing with magicians because he'll do something clearly like, and then he'll switch it up at the end where he didn't actually do anything for the joke. So it's funny. It's a good time. The audience suspects even for a moment, we've already read that part, missed, not miss, missed direction. The load of the lemon, the ditch of the billet, the pass. In many magic routines, there comes that moment when you do something sneaky that shouldn't be a problem, because as a magician, you have developed a basic understanding of misdirection. Why, then, do we see so many performers execute the move at exactly the wrong moment when all eyes are on them? Go back to your script and figure out the prime moment when attention has shifted away from you, or more specifically, from your hands. This problem should be evident to you when you study that video of yourself. In most cases, the simplest solution is don't talk when you perform a secret move. Perhaps ask someone a question or give an instruction for something to be done, then do the dirty work when the person responds. The suggestion about doing the move when you are not talking applies to platform or stage performers and not necessarily to close up workers. In tight quarters, people are more focused on your face as you talk. You put in the time to perfect the move, now you have to put equal effort into hiding the move. You cannot skip this step! Exclamation point. Let's take a look here. We are still wowzers. We still got a then we got the highlight coming. And you're looking at a good 17 pages. Wowzers. Got a lot to get through in this one. Eyes wide shut. Many performers, mentalists especially, cavalierly ask volunteers on stage to stand and close their eyes, and don't open them until I tell you to. Have you ever tried that yourself? Stand in one spot for 3 or 4 minutes with your eyes closed. Now imagine that you're in front of an audience and you know they are all looking, staring perhaps at you. And now assume that from the start you were queasy about coming up on stage, in front of friends and strangers. You may feel fine and most people will be okay with you, but not all. Some will have had a drink or three before coming up. Some will have latent anxiety that manifests itself at that very moment. And other folks may have balance issues. And any one of those can spell trouble for the performer. If you need to have a spectator close his or her eyes, do one of two things. Either have them sit on a chair, which may not be practical for your routine, or keep the request for eyes closed to an absolute minimum amount of time. Often you can have them open their eyes for a moment before moving on to the next part of the routine. You might reassure them by giving them advance notice of the time, by saying something like, I'm going to ask you to keep your eyes closed for around 30 seconds. In other words, be considerate and aware of what they are feeling. This same concept applies to asking your volunteer to hold their arm out. What is easy for most people may not be easy for this particular volunteer. Careful where you step. Every time you leave the stage or the stage area, you risk losing your hold on your audience. A few performers, mentalists Mark Salem and Luor Sigurd, for example, thrive on getting down and dirty with their spectators by moving among them. And certainly it's not an issue for two-person acts such as The Eversons, which has Jeff roaming the audience and keeping up a constant flow of fast-paced chatter with a wireless handheld microphone, while lovely Tessa locks the focus on the stage. But more often, for most performers, leaving the stage backfires. Step into the audience where I can't see you, and suddenly I don't care about you. Why should I? You obviously don't care about me if I am forced to strain to see or hear the action. Negative vibes are setting in. It comes back to being aware of everything the audience sees and hears. Too many performers believe they are increasing the audience participation factor by descending into the audience, when in fact, they are boosting interest merely for those who happen to be sitting near the action. Others lose interest, so except for them, you have a compelling reason to go into the audience. Stay in control by staying up where all can see and hear you. Share and share again. Every word you utter while in front of an audience would matter and should move your act forward. If every word truly is important, then don't cheat anyone out of the pleasure of hearing those words. Other than stage whispers or words you intentionally say off microphone, say everything to the entire audience. from the front to the last person in the back row. Half mumbled asides make those who miss them feel left out. Be aware, too, that not every person in your audience hangs on your every word. You may need to reinforce key parts. So, for example, if you showed the cards were all different at the beginning of a long trick, you may want to show them again at the conclusion, especially if an obvious solution would be that all the cards are the same. If you can anticipate some of the explanations for your miracles and demolish them without sacrificing the impact of the presentation, do so. No, thank you. At the close of each trick, you may want to say, "Thank you very much." That's fine, but I believe that phrase should be used just once. As pointed out earlier, we strive to surprise. Repeating "thank you very much" becomes repetitive since it offers nothing new. You do not need to thank your audience after every climax, but you do need to acknowledge the culmination of your routine. With just a bit of thought, you can revise your script so that the final words punch up the close, a true punchline. You might use a recap, "I can't believe I found one card of thousands!" exclamation point, or some variation of the empathetic "yes!" exclamation point to highlight the difficulty you managed to overcome, although actually saying the word "yes" is a bit hackneyed. If you have volunteers on stage with you asking for applause to thank your assistants, nicely closes the routine. A quick tilted bow of just your head signals thank you without saying it. Treat your props with respect, except for perhaps when you are producing cards from the air. Don't toss props into your receptacle like they are trash. They're not. They are object of magic and wonder. Other than cards or coins, most of your props should be placed, not thrown or carelessly dropped into whatever is meant to hold them, which leads to dirty baggage. Now, I do want to make a reference here, an analogy that just popped in my head. If you're familiar with card games like Yu-Gi-Oh, then you have a mat, right, on your board where you put your monster cards, your trap cards, your magic cards, all that. You have your deck, and then you have your graveyard, and then you have some extra zones all over the board. So the point of this is that you pull your magic, your props from the deck, right? You play the cards at the top in the monster zone or the magic zone or trap zone, wherever they happen to go. When they are done, you're discarding them to the graveyard. Don't forget in your show that you need to have a receptacle for your things, okay? And of course, as he's pointing out here, some of those props are not cheap. Just saying, some of the stuff that I just have on my desk here is, maybe a couple $100 of props sitting here. So you definitely don't want to just toss them nilly-willy. Okay, so just really keep that in mind. As a brief note, I do want to talk about Ortomnia. Right? Ortomnia is a Kickstarter that's launched by an individual named Deli, or Mystic Shelter, over on here on YouTube. I will be doing a longer video on this topic, but I did want to briefly mention it is a card game contained in a box, and if you do purchase this through Kickstarter, you'll receive everything in the box that you need to play from maybe 3 or 4 players, depending on how you do it. Definitely 2 people will be able to play from this box set. So check that out. More on that later. Dirty baggage. Don't you love it when you can do your show directly out of the suitcase you traveled there with? Yes? Maybe you should rethink that strategy. It's distracting when we see an elegantly dressed performer taking props in and out of a scruffy-looking piece of luggage. It brings down the visual appeal of what we're watching. The answer will be different for each performer. Perhaps it's buying new luggage more frequently. Perhaps it's as simple as shining up the case before it's placed on the stage. Or perhaps you can redesign your show that you never perform on stage with your luggage. Now, obviously, this is stage specific. And one of the things that we've studied extensively is busking magic, street magic, performing on the street, whether from your pockets or from a tabletop, anything like that. And a lot of them have a carry-on or a trunk they'll carry with them. And so I've seen buskers perform stage. And Cosmo Magic is absolutely fantastic. I highly recommend. He's part of a group here in New York, Magic Beyond Imagination. I have the poster behind me. I don't have anywhere to hang it up down here. I actually have 2 of those posters now, and I would like to go see them again. I have seen Garrett Thomas live performing with this group, and Cosmo is fantastic. Now, when I did watch this show, I saw everything that was happening, but I really enjoyed the entertainment factor. The only thing that stumped me up the first time that I watched the show is the bill to lemon. I missed the moment when he was loading the lemon, and my brother did point it out to me. It was just a really nice moment where he's digging through his trunk, which is brings us back full circle. He performs out of his trunk. That's where everything is for the purpose of his character. So, don't be rough with your animals. As important as it is to treat your props with respect, it's vastly more important to treat any living thing with respect. From the instant that dove appears to the moment it's gently placed, not pushed, exclamation point, into its cage, your every move should signal, even if it's just for a fleeting instant, your compassion, your love for your living assistant. Today there is a heightened awareness of the condition of performing critters. Many in your audience will judge you harshly, and rightfully so, if they perceive the slightest hint of mistreatment of birds, bunnies, puppies, or any other animal. And that rule applies before, during, and after your show. Now, a couple of points there. Taking care of an animal is not just performing it on stage. There's a lot that goes into taking care of that animal. There's a lot that goes into preparing and training that animal for the purpose of your show. It's not necessarily just a house pet. That's a full stop. It is also nice to have those because after the show, you can offer some interaction with the spectators to come up and see the animals, which gives you some brownie points. That's just like something that I want to work into one of my birthday ideas, my birthday show ideas, is I want to do some balloon swallowing during the show, but then I also want to have my balloon animal stuff separate so that if they do want me to stay around to, just put together some balloon animals for the kids, or before I do the show, I can do that. So that is kind of part of my plan to offer more products and services to my overall bill. That way I can be there longer and get paid more and offer them better entertainment fitting a bigger package. Maybe they just hired me to come out and do, maybe they got like some activities, maybe they're doing a little carnival, maybe they got some face painters, and they want somebody who's not necessarily specifically as a magician, but somebody to do the balloon animals, and then the magic can just be separate from that. Okay. MC Hammered. Stay in this business long enough and you will almost certainly be asked to be the master of ceremonies for some events. So let me help you avoid the typical missteps. Primarily understand and accept that your role as MC is to function as a shock absorber between the segments of the evening. Usually the segments are acts, but not always. You may need to deal with speeches or other business matters. First, greet the audience with a smile and set the tone for the evening. But don't perform a full routine before the first act. Like it or not, once the audience knows your role, you are not seen as the star. Plus, it's likely you don't get the strong introduction that you will give to the other performers, so they don't yet have a warm relationship with you. You perform right at the start only when necessary, which typically means the opening act isn't ready. Shame on them! Exclamation point. Don't perform long set pieces from your normal show more than once. At all other times, you are there to hold the audience's attention between the act's other actions. Again, the exception to this is when an act needs more time to prepare. As a brief side note, Joe Maxwell, the first time that I saw Magic Beyond Imagination, he did a single trick in between segments, whether they're still getting set up or whether it was just part of the act in the show. He had been emceeing for other things as well. He was a musician, and so he was emceeing for Magic Beyond emceeing, basically. And he, even on the poster, brings out a wine production. And if I remember correctly, it's been years, but if I remember correctly, he makes some type of thing like, now I get to enjoy the show just like you guys, and steps off. So I don't think a wine production is terrible. I think that's an okay thing to do, personally for myself, because he's alluding to the fact that he's going to be enjoying the show with them. And then he does a trick later on between the segments that's a little bit longer, where he does a uh, multiple card selection routine, which I think is actually pretty brilliant. I'd be real nervous to do it just for many different reasons that things could go wrong. And I thought it worked out pretty well. And he even had a multiple parter to it that really flowed pretty good. So you definitely know that he worked on that, and he pulled it off pretty good. Yeah, and of course, always walk out ready to fill more time than expected. I'll add to that often. The MC becomes the de facto stage manager, the last line of defense against chaos. So be prepared to pull rank and get problems fixed behind the scenes. Show your best side. Never turn your back to the audience. It's rude and it instantly breaks the connection you have with your audience. This rule applies to all show folks, but it's essentially important for silent, non-speaking performers. If a speaking performer momentarily turns away from us, the patter can distract us or hold our attention. But if you are not talking, all action is on your backside, which unless you are fill in the blank, your butt is likely not your best side! Exclamation point. This error most often happens when the performer picks up or returns a prop to his case. It's simple enough to block your movement so you avoid that awkward moment. The obvious exception is when you go into the audience and then make your way back to the stage, a trick silent performers rarely make. Hypnotists who spend much of their time talking to their volunteers on stage are another exception, but they too should strive to minimize the time their back faces front. Back to the example of Cosmo with his trunk, it was actually positioned right behind the table as a carry-on, like can't remember what it's called. The thing that you put around your waist that has the big pouch. Maybe I'll think about it in a little bit. I want to get one. A savant. Maybe it's a savant. It goes on your waist and then you can have stuff in it. But yeah, so it was like strapped to the table so that he could still face the audience while he's like digging around in it and get stuff in and out of it. And it was part of the show, so it really just it flowed. Signing off on signing. On the day you read this sentence, thousands of magicians around the world will ask the spectator to sign something so they can prove that the object displayed at the beginning of the routine is the same object shown at the climax. It's time to rethink that process. When you ask to have a bill or a card signed, you set up a challenge. Uh-oh, the spectator reasons I better keep an eye on this bill because it's gonna do something sneaky. He's gonna do something sneaky with it. If you do have a card, bill, or any other object signed, you have three choices from an entertainment perspective. Make the process of signing part of the entertainment, not an easy task, or keep up the patter by having something witty or useful to say to the signer or observers, or stand back and let the magic come to the fore, that is, going for maximum impact by using minimum showmanship a la Blaine. I think the example of Brendan when he brought the puppet out while the guy was signing, I still think that was a pretty good way to go because it made a joke of the moment. You know, but I'm not. And I think that's pretty similar to what he was saying here, having some witty or useful thing to say. In theory, the third choice should be the easiest one. The very fact that you want the object signed signals that this unfolding demonstration has serious mystical qualities. In other words, it's a great trick. Lordy, lordy, how did my card get into the envelope inside his wallet? But it's also the most likely tactic to result in dead time. This option works only when your target is a highly charged, dramatic moment. Always ask yourself, does the signing of the card or bill truly add to the final impact of the routine? In many routines, the signing ceremony adds little, while slowing down the proceedings. I previously alluded to one example of this problem in the case study for Ripped and Restored. Here's another example, this time from John Allen's ghost routine on his Spectators Don't Exist video. He borrows a $20 bill, has it signed, and this is what ensues. Dead time while the elderly man meticulously writes his first and last names. More dead time when he looks for it, finds, and then replaces the cap of the pen. Still more dead time when John asks for the pen back. And sure enough, a few moments into the routine, the man turns to his wife and asks, "Is that the same bill?" Now, back to Makobi. We were talking about him, the FISM winner who makes it all look sloppy. He comes on the stage and he's just like, I got a little bit of time. Let me show you something. A little bit of time." And he goes through and he's like, we gotta have sign the card. Nah, we don't have time. And he scribbles on it, and then he goes right into the routine. So I think that what he's doing here, again, he's making the signing a part of the routine, and I think that really works out pretty well. It's obvious why the man asked that. At the start, John set the routine up as some sort of catch me if you can challenge. Again, in the spectator's mind, why else would he be required to sign a perfectly ordinary object? Then the routine gets on track and the bill jumps around quite magically. The bill is handed back and the group of three applauds sincerely and appreciatively. To most performers, that was a successful routine, and it was! Exclamation point. But it could have been a bit smoother. How different would the take-home memory be if that bill had not been signed? To my mind, not very. Paper currency is not supposed to hover in the air and dance inside a wine glass, just inches from the spectator's face. The magic is this. John borrows a bill, crumples it up, drops it into a glass, and untouched, it moves and eventually jumps through the air. What difference does it make if this bill floats or that bill? A floating, dancing, hopping bill is magic, period. Asking the spectator to sign the bill sets up a needless challenge that adds nothing to the entertainment value of the routine. Plus, if you conclude by returning the bill, that in itself confirms its normalcy. Yes, there are routines where the mystery grows appreciably by proving the coin, card, or bill you start with is the one you end with. Just be certain the incremental proof of your magical prowess does not diminish the entertainment value of the routine. Let's look at this from the opposite point of view. We have a multitude of examples where gimmicked objects are not signed, yet the magic suffers not a whit. Mike Skinner's Ultimate 3-Card Monty uses specially printed cards, and all eyes burn those 3 cards for several minutes. Yet according to Skinner, Bill Malone, Patrick Page, and others who featured this and similar routines, no one asked to examine the cards. Why? Because the routines are carefully constructed to give the audience the impression that they repeatedly see all the fronts and backs. Suppose someone comes up with a method to accomplish those identical 3-card Monty effects with borrowed cards. It's certain that some magicians would have the cards signed to prove something. Would that strengthen the effect? No. Signing would add nothing for a lay audience. For magicians, yes. For normal people, no. Lastly, if you must have the object signed, initials deliver the same impact as a full signature and take less time. Power shifting. Transitions, the moments between tricks, suffer if they are not as well rehearsed as the tricks themselves. The actions and words that take your show from the climax of one effect to the opening of the next are not afterthoughts! Exclamation point. Let me read that again. The actions and words that take your show from the climax of one effect to the opening of the next are not afterthoughts! Exclamation point. What do you do with the card case, scissors, leaking rings when you finish with each? Do you casually toss them aside? Is that the image you want? It might be, but is it? Or did you toss them aside because you never thought about what message that sends? How do you pick up those props? Where are they? How do you get from one spot on stage to another? If you have not worked those answers out beforehand, you will pay the price during your show. Whose fault is it? Anyway, in an internet mentalism forum, a performer posted a message about seeing a fellow performer who asked the person to open the book to any page and think of a word. When the mentalist divined the wrong word, the person said, "Oh, you meant a word from the book." And then the writer berated the volunteer for his supposed stupidity. In the service industry, the adage says the customer is always right, which I don't always agree with, even from a person who worked in that type of field. When something goes wrong in showbiz, you'd better believe that the audience assumes the performer is always at fault. the facts don't matter. Now, I agree in this case that if you're controlling every moment, even if a mistake happens, you should be prepared to keep moving forward in a way that's entertaining. Because let's be for real. Let's say you mess up the magic. Let's say you botch it completely. If you can keep the audience on your side, you've won. They've paid money to be entertained. Doesn't matter what you do. What matters is that you're successful. Results matter. When something goes wrong in showbiz, you'd better believe that the audience assumes the performer is always at fault. The facts don't matter. The fault could have been totally beyond your control, but still you bear the blame. Performers, too, often claim, as Shakespeare alluded to in Julius Caesar, that the fault lies somewhere other than within themselves. In the case described above, two possible cases come to mind. He either picked the wrong person to help, or he failed to instruct clearly, or both. The instructions as related in the anecdote open the book to any page and think of a word, are not as clear as any magicians or mentalists believe. A nervous or confused spectator might think that you were going to do something else with the book. Perhaps announce the page number stopped at or describe pictures on the page. Now, as a brief side note, I was watching David over at Magic Orthodoxy, just did a complete breakdown. You might want to join the membership because he's got some spectacular stuff that you want to be aware of. Not just reviews, he's deep diving. So he was talking about his setup, he was talking about his show, and he said, in paraphrasing, he nailed it. He killed it. He did fantastic. But he knew he made two mistakes. Whether the audience knew or not, didn't matter. He knew he made two mistakes, so he knows he can improve. And obviously, you could be performing for 100 years and know that every single time you step on stage, you should be prepared to learn something new. Back into it. Or the spectator parse the performer's instructions with literal exactness. Open the book to any page. Okay, I did that. Think of a word. Okay, I'll think about, let's see, my favorite sport, baseball. Ta-da! Exclamation point. The performer is screwed. Then, to an obstreperous spectator might deliberately exploit the ambiguity. The solution is to foresee these scenarios and then script your words to head off problems. So, for example, in this case, please open the book to any page. Have you done that? Now, please let your eyes move over that page and then focus on just one of the words you see there. As an example, I gave when I was out of town this past weekend, and I went to, not yesterday, but last weekend, I performed for a kid, and at the end, I was like, here, hold on to this, and he thought I meant he could have it. And I was like, no, just kidding. He also looked at it right away. So I really didn't build up that tension enough, and I did not instruct him properly. And like I said, 100% my fault. But I still think we did okay. I mean, that in the poorest way possible. Get better. Do better. Having the attitude, it's always my fault, may seem slightly paranoid, but it's an attitude a performer needs to cultivate internally. He must actively work towards solutions rather than blaming the audience. A performer's attitude, when a moment doesn't go as planned, ought to be, I could have done something to avoid that problem. What do I need to do next time to make it right? This is how creativity works. That's why you should be writing stuff down. That's why you should be practicing. That's why you should be constantly thinking, so that when you're out in the wild doing this stuff, your brain has already been processing it in the back. That's how you get more creative. So like I was saying in one of my previous videos, I said just challenge yourself when you're out and about with friends or you're just having conversations. I was making references to callbacks. So later in the conversation, bring up something that you talked about previously in the conversation as the joke, if it's a comedic conversation, just having fun with friends or whatever, just make those jokes. But not just that. Slowly start to incorporate into your patter as you're conversating with your friends and things like that, as long as the situation is appropriate. Try to work your creativity into it. And then after you're done with that conversation, write it down, think about it, go through the mental exercises. And if at any point you're like, oh, I could have said this or I could have said that, write it down, think about it, mull it over. And then next time you're having that conversation, you might not be having the same conversation, hopefully not, maybe with somebody else, But you could potentially have those synopsises ready to fire because you've already been practicing it. So now your brain, instead of thinking about it 2 days later, your brain's thinking about it 1 day later. And then you keep practicing, and then you know, 5 hours later, and then you finally get to the point where your brain snaps right into it because you've practiced, and now you're firing immediately, and now you have a comeback. Now you have something, and that's what you got to practice that because everything's a skill that needs to be honed. It's a muscle. You got to build those muscles. Where am I at? What do I need to do next time to make it right? It's a narcissistic mindset, but ultimately it leads to a higher level of success. The temptation to blame someone or something else is huge. Don't give in to it. As magicians and mentalists, one skill we must possess is the ability to create clear verbal instructions that minimize possible misunderstandings as a reasonable first step. Avoid any routine that involves complex verbal instructions and always acknowledge, dear performer, that the fault lies not in our stars but in ourselves. Wowzers. We are almost an hour into it. Let's double check. Oh, okay. So we've got about 3 pages left of this chapter, and then we've got a good 2 pages left of the highlights at the end. So we're going to go ahead and stretch it out. We're not going to do push-ups today. We're just going to stand and just stretch because we've got some build-up. And it's good just to stretch. Get those tendons working. We've been sitting for an hour plus. Obviously we've been sitting longer than the video. And we just want to make sure we're shaking it out and we're getting as much movement as possible because movement is so important. As a side note, something that's kind of interesting research wise is that individuals with ADHD tend to have a higher metabolism because they are fidgety. And so they have done research to show that sometimes with ADHD, you tend to have a higher metabolism because you're constantly moving and you're burning excess energy. So just, a fun fact. Keep reading. Everything. Every day, read something new. Whew. Beautiful. Okay. Let's go ahead and finish this up. You all know this, right? Here's something that at first glance may seem to be outside the scope of this book, but it's not. I'm talking about the common practice of lecturers at magic conventions. When doing the explanation of a trick, they pause and ask the audience, do I need to explain that? Or they'll look at us and say, you all know this, right? This happens frequently. More than half the lecturers at a major magic convention I attended in 2018 asked some form of those questions. It's time wasting, often annoying, and more importantly, it speaks to a larger issue than what happens in a lecture for magicians. That is, anytime you're in front of any audience doing anything, you need to put yourself into the minds of that audience. So in this example, when you ask, do I need to explain that? You are immediately intimidating all those who in fact have no idea what you're talking about! Exclamation point. No one knows everything, not me, not you, no one. When you turn to ask if something needs to be explained, you're implying that this is so simple that it's hardly worth wasting time on. And who would feel comfortable raising his or her hand at that moment? I wouldn't. And yes, I've been the dullard who didn't know whether that was a mnemonica or a Ronson stack. What's worse, invariably, the lecturer will respond to the one or two people who actually say something out loud, but might be exactly contrary to what the overwhelming majority of the audience would prefer! Exclamation point. By the way, it's similar to when the lecturer asks, do you want me to do X or should I do Y? And again, one or two people get to steer the ship. So whether you are a lecturer, speaker, or entertainer, think about what your audience is thinking and what they are feeling. Put yourself in their shoes or their seats and continue to control every moment. When bad things happen to good performers, and they will, the gods that decide who shall kill today, theatrically speaking, and who shall melt into a puddle of flop sweat are notoriously capricious. Doves die, metal fatigues, cards drop, and non-English speaking spectators come on stage to help with your add a number. Disasters, major and minor, befall all performers eventually. I recall a lecture given by Marvin Roy, Mr. Electric. He regaled us with reminiscences of a glittering, successful lifetime in show business, and he didn't shirk from sharing how, despite hours of careful preparation before each 12-minute set, at one time or another, everything would go wrong. Did. Murphy's Law will subpoena you too one day. When it does, cut your losses, the sooner the better. I have watched the quicksand of calamities suck performers down as they unwisely struggle to put things right. Don't let that happen to you! Exclamation point. Instead, within moments of realizing that something has gone dreadfully wrong, move on. You might preface the transition with words along the lines of, "Ladies and gentlemen, things aren't going as planned. Fortunately, I have," and advance immediately to your next routine. What if the screw up happens during your final routine? Same advice. Cut the bit as soon as you realize it's beyond repair, except now, and I'm assuming you don't have an alternative ending, you're going to rely on your charm to steer your ship back to port. A smile, perhaps a friendly shrug, a quick acknowledgement that it's just one of those things will communicate your humanity, alleviate the tension, and help you reconnect with the audience. You've been successful in all else, and now you can still bring your show to a successful conclusion. At the soonest possible moment, return to your script and close the show. And once you do, return to the script, never acknowledge that anything went awry. They don't care. Sometimes, however, you might think things are worse than they are. It's a matter of degree. As John Lovick told me, what I have learned over time is that when minor things go wrong with a trick, if you just continue, the trick will usually play just as well. Things that you think give away the game aren't always fatal, and it's best to just plow ahead. I've seen many magicians bail on a trick when they really didn't need to. Again, having a script you believe in helps keep you on track, regardless of major or minor missteps. Above all, when bad things happen, it's never anyone else's fault. Regardless of the actual cause of the misfortune, the entertainer can never blame the civilian or the backstage folks. Well, actually, you can dump on the knuckle-dragging doofuses who caused you harm. Just not while you're still in the front of the audience. Yes, they are jerks. Too bad. Never insult an audience. Never insult an audience member. Never insult any tech person, food server, security person, hotel staff, in any words. Never insult anyone who is on the premise or anyone who is personally known to your audience. We all know that the temptation to lash out at the fool who accidentally, or worse, intentionally ruined your pet routine, but you must resist. Yes, you might temporarily feel better, but at what cost? I've seen top pros make these mistakes, and I've been told about others who lashed out. Sometimes the performer goes for a laugh. Sometimes it's clear it's always been a he, is seriously angry. Regardless, the moment you do that, you pop! Exclamation point. The balloon of entertainment. Your moment of discomfort flows out into your audience and they feel it. And Superman is now just one of them, an ordinary workaday human dealing with the stress of his job. When that happens, entertainment, like that balloon, shrinks. Smile and the whole world smiles with you. Don't forget to smile as often as is practical throughout your time in front of an audience. What happens in a social situation when you smile at someone? They smile back at you. Similarly, when you are on stage and you sincerely smile at the people watching you, they spontaneously smile. Human beings feel happy when they smile, so anything you can do to induce smiles is a good thing. When people smile, their brains reflexively respond by thinking to themselves, "I'm having a good time!" Exclamation point. That works! Exclamation point. He ain't heavy, he's my bro. If you're on a bill with other performers, understand that it's always a team effort. Therefore, whether it's the Illusionist on Broadway or a charity event at the high school, you should help everyone shine. So if you see something that you can help with, do it. And that especially applies if that's something the other guy might not be aware of. A problem with the sound or lights, an unruly audience member, outside noises, etc. Do anything that will lift the other performer and help him or her be their best. Do it because it's the right thing, and do it because it will make you look better. Wowzers, that's chapter 20. Let's go ahead and do the personal entertainment highlight. Gil Eagles. We've heard that name flying around too. But the Q&A act. I first met Gil Eagles in the Catskill Mountains, where we were two young mentalists competing against each other in the early 1970s. I was earning $75 a show, and Gil, a few years my senior, was raking in a jealously inducing $125 per, and he often did 7 or 8 shows a week. This during a time when Gil was renting a Greenwich Village studio apartment for $80 a month! Exclamation point. That's crazy. I mean, that right there. This has to be fiction. Just say it. As a budding mentalist, I had studied the text about acts in which the audience writes questions hidden from the performer's view, and the mystic gives out answers with startling accuracy. Most of those texts had been written in the 1930s and 40s, and I was certain the sophisticated post-moon landing audience of the 70s would scoff and snicker at any fool who tried to hold their attention with such antics. Could I have been more wrong? Over the years, I have audited Gil Eagles' show many times, in many venues, including colleges and high-end corporate gigs. Gil's list of repeat gigs is a highly representative sampling of the Fortune 500. Always for big money, always plus first class, airfare, and limo. There is never a moment when those around me are not zeroed in on the man on stage, as he appropriately calls thoughts from random spots around the room while hopelessly blindfolded with silver dollars, tape, and a leather blindfold. Bodies lean forward so that not a moment is missed. He evokes laughter without jokes and amazes in ways having nothing to do with magic text tricks. When he announces that he is going to answer just one more question, palpable disappointment invariably engulfs the room. Now understand that Gil never gives out psychic predictions about any spectator's future. He answers questions by reflecting back information he knows about the present situation, yet in a manner that indicates some sort of extraordinary, unknowable knowledge. He does it with compassion, amazing skill, and off-the-moment humor. No other performer has perfected the question and answer act to this level, and I fear that once Gil hangs up the blindfold for good, a piece of our craft will be permanently retired. A highlight within a highlight. Removing the blindfold. It's a nondescript moment, at least it should be. No music plays, no magic or special effects of any kind take place, no stories are told, simply the necessary action of concluding his performance. For almost 30 minutes he has stood before the audience bereft of eye contact. Now he must remove the blindfold and remind all that his power of vision has been blocked beyond question. He brings his face directly up to the microphone, handheld, of course, on a mic stand, and every so slowly peels the surgical tape down, the skin peeling away from his palpable face as the ripping sound carries over the PA system. Every set of eyes stares transfixed. When finished, his hands holding the blindfold paraphernalia drop to his side. He blinks as his eyes adjust to the light, and he takes a small bow, really just a nod of his head. It's a non-theatrical, by traditional standards, climactic moment of high-level impact, and there's never a sound in the audience while it's happening. An ovation breaks the silence every time. When the show is over, most often the meeting planner is immediately peppered with questions about when can we bring him back. By the way, as Gil, who went on to become a major award-winning motivational speaker and who is retired now, will happily tell you, his act today is exactly the same act he did in the Catskills for $125. An update. Gil performed his full 50-minute act before some 150 laymen, magicians, and mentalists at the 2017 Mindvention in Las Vegas. My guess is that much more than half the room knew nothing about Gil or his background. In the months leading up to the convention, several of us had tried to dissuade him from doing it. It will tarnish your image, we implored, reminding him that the Mind Vision audience is nothing like a lay audience. They will sit there, arms crossed, analyzing, we warned. Plus, Steele had done the act maybe twice in 10 years. Exclamation point. Surely he'd be rusty. Nope. Within minutes, we all knew we were watching the master. I'm tearing up. I'm tearing up. Watching the master as the time came for the blindfold to be removed. I became nervous. After all, I had written more than a decade earlier that this moment was special, a highlight within a highlight. Would my words look foolish? As the blindfold came off and he thanked his onstage helpers, the entire audience jumped to their feet, cheering! Exclamation point! Why am I crying? I don't know, but it's impactful stuff. Clearly, the show wasn't over, but they needed to express their joy. Whew! Selfishly, I felt vindicated for my close friend. Needless to say, a few minutes later, when he did end his performance, the audience repeated the prolonged standing ovation. That's beautiful. That's actually kind of really what you want, right? Because this is the guy. He's so well known and so well respected. And he does something that everybody thinks is going to go a certain way, and it gets proven wrong in the best way possible. Absolutely love it. We are on chapter 21 for tomorrow, and we're on page 301. I mean, look at this. We have worked our way through this book. And to be honest, I really do want to just give you a final thank you here before we finish this up. I wouldn't have made it this far in the book without your help. So I really do appreciate you guys giving me the inspiration to do this. Someday, somebody will see it. Just like all the Easter eggs that I've left in my videos, there's giveaways still happening on the channel. There's a book sponsorship that you could be a part of at any time. And just thank you so much. And don't forget to subscribe. It really does help out the channel. And don't forget to check out the video just for you. Yep, just for you. Ta-da!